I still remember the night he left. Jake looked at me, half smiling, and said, "You're wasting your time, Mia. No one's gonna buy into your little student project." My chest burned, but I said nothing. Everyone, from my parents to him, thought I was just a broke college girl chasing a fantasy. What they didn't know was that every late night, every skipped party, was building something they couldn't imagine. 6 months later, under the blinding lights of the biggest tech conference in the country, I saw him again, and for the first time he looked small. The bus brake squealed as it lurched to a stop, the winter hair slicing through my coat as I stepped down onto the icy sidewalk. Across the street, my younger brother, Ethan, sat behind the wheel of a shiny new sedan. Our parents' congratulations gift for getting into a mediocre business program. I had to hunch my shoulders against the wind, clutching the worn straps of my backpack, pretending I didn't notice him wave before speeding off toward campus. I was used to it. Ethan got cars, I got bus tickets. Ethan got praise for passing exams. I got questioned for topping mine. That night, the dining table was a battlefield disguised under fine china. My mother's voice, lilting and cheerful for our guests, cut into me without her even realizing. Or maybe she did. "Mia's sweet," she said, refilling someone's wineglass. "But she's not really leadership material." The words slid across the table like a knife, and though the conversation kept flowing, my fork froze halfway to my mouth. I forced a laugh that didn't sound like me. You ever hear a sentence that sticks to your ribs, even when you try to scrape it away? That was mine. I caught Ethan's eyes. He leaned back in his chair, smirking like he'd overheard a private joke. "Don't be upset, sis," he murmured when no one was looking. "When I'm running the family business, I'll make sure you've got a comfortable position." It was wrapped in brotherly affection, but every word felt like a pat on the head, a promise of a cage. Later, in the quiet of my cramped bedroom, I tried to shake it off. It was just one comment, one evening. But my mind began stringing together every small moment I'd brushed aside. Missed vacations, the summer camp he attended while I worked at a diner, the way my achievements were met with silence, while his were celebrated like miracles. A week later, while searching for an old textbook, I found a worn leather journal at the back of my father's desk drawer. I shouldn't have opened it, but curiosity has a way of prying fingers open. On the first page, in his tidy handwriting, was a line that nearly knocked the breath out of me. "Invest in the child with the most potential. It saves resources in the long run." It was so clinical, so cold. I flipped through the pages, each one confirming what I'd felt my whole life. Scholarships were unnecessary for Ethan because we can afford to pay for him. My summer internship offers, not worth the commute. Even my college choice was framed as manageable rather than impressive. The memories rushed back, standing at the kitchen counter with a science fair ribbon in hand, only to be told, "That's nice, Mia. Ethan just won his soccer match." Watching my acceptance letter to the computer science program get set aside because Ethan's business school sent glossy brochures. That evening I climbed the narrow ladder to the roof of our apartment building, the winter wind biting my cheeks. The city below glittered like a promise I didn't quite believe in yet. My breath came out in white clouds, and I whispered to no one, "What did I do wrong?" The answer didn't come. The cold numbed my fingers, but not the weight in my chest. For a moment, I let myself imagine a different life. A family dinner where my name wasn't an afterthought. A place where I wasn't competing for scraps of approval. The vision vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by the familiar ache of reality. When I finally climbed back down, my phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a message from Jake. "Free tomorrow?" I need to talk to you." I stared at the screen, the words blurring slightly. Jake never used that tone unless something was wrong. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, but I didn't reply right away. I just sat there, listening to the faint hum of the refrigerator, the city noise drifting through the window, and the pounding in my ears. Somewhere in the space between his message and my silence, I knew something was about to shift. Though whether it would be the break I needed or another crack in the foundation, I couldn't tell yet. I signed up for the advanced programming course the next morning. It was 3 levels above my current syllabus, crammed into 8 brutal weeks, and cost more than I could comfortably afford. To make it happen, I picked up extra night shifts at the campus cafe, stacking dirty dishes and wiping counters until my fingers smelled permanently of burnt espresso. Each paycheck went straight into a savings envelope, marked laptop fund, until the day I carried home a sleek new machine that could finally keep up with my code. At first, Jake seemed impressed. "You're really going for it," he said, flipping through my course materials one afternoon. I thought it was pride in his voice, but maybe it was just curiosity. We still went out sometimes. Late-night burgers, walks along the river. But soon my free hours narrowed to nothing. I cancelled dinners. I turned down movie nights. When I was awake, I was coding. When I slept, I dreamed in syntax. One night, he knocked on my dorm door holding a steaming bag of takeout noodles. "Figured you could use a break," he said, grinning. I nearly cried from the gesture. We sat cross-legged on the floor, slurping noodles between my scattered notebooks and open tabs. I thought, he gets it. He sees me trying. But the next morning, while I was packing up to spend the day at the computer lab, he leaned against the doorframe. "You've changed, Mia," he said, his voice low. "You're not the girl I started dating. You're somewhere else all the time." I swallowed hard, my mind scrambling for the right answer, but none came. I just left, clutching my laptop like a shield. A week later, an email arrived in my inbox. "Congratulations! You've been selected as a finalist for the statewide student hackathon." My heart hammered as I reread the words. This was it. A chance to prove, not just to Jake or my family, but to myself, that the long nights meant something. I sent Jake a screenshot of the email with a line of exclamation marks. His reply was short. "Nice. When's the event?" The hackathon was a blur of bright lights, coffee breath, and frantic typing. My team and I had been working on an app that connected students with short-term freelance gigs, a bridge between class projects and real income. For 22 straight hours, we coded, tested, and refined. Then 5 minutes before our presentation, the server crashed. Our demo wouldn't load. We tried everything, rebooting, patching, even praying. But the clock ran out. We presented a static slideshow instead of a working app. We didn't place. On the bus ride home, my phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Did you win?" "No?" "Well, maybe focus on school first. These side things are only worth it if they pay off." I closed my eyes, pressing my forehead against the cold glass. 2 days later, Jake ended it. We sat on a bench outside the library, and he wouldn't meet my eyes. "You're chasing something that's not going to happen," he said. I don't think you're going to make it, Mia. And I can't keep waiting for you to come back to reality." His words hit harder than I expected. Not because I believed him, but because part of me feared he might be right. That night, I couldn't focus on code. My screen stayed blank while my thoughts spiraled. Out of frustration, I recorded a 30-second video on my phone, a sarcastic monologue about being too ambitious for your own good, while twirling my pen like it was a magic wand. I posted it to TikTok without thinking, just to vent into the void. By morning, it had 200,000 views. People flooded the comments with their own stories of being underestimated. They called me the relatable tech girl and begged for updates on my project. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. It didn't change the hackathon loss or the breakup, but it felt like someone out there was listening. Later that afternoon, as I was wiping down tables at the cafe, my phone buzzed again. The message preview read, "We should meet. I've seen your work. L. Carter, CEO, Novatech." I froze mid-swipe, my cloth dripping soap onto the floor. I didn't know whether to smile or run. L. Carter turned out to be nothing like I'd imagined. I expected a polished executive in a sterile office, but she greeted me in sneakers and a hoodie, coffee in one hand, a tablet in the other. "You've got something," she said after pulling up a chair in a quiet co-working space downtown. "The app is solid, the market's hungry, and you," she tapped the table for emphasis, "you have the grit to push it through." She became my mentor almost instantly. Under her guidance, my scattered ideas turned into a roadmap. She walked me through pitch decks, investor psychology, even the subtle art of answering a question you can't actually answer. We spent hours dissecting my app's features, polishing the design, and running mock pitches until my voice stopped shaking. When the day of my first investor presentation arrived, I stood at the front of a small conference room, palms slick against the clicker. 6 pairs of eyes stared back, unreadable. I took a breath, remembered Carter's words, "Own the room, even if you have to fake it," and began. By the time I clicked to the final slide, I felt taller, stronger. One investor leaned forward, smiling. "We'll be in touch." That night, high on adrenaline, I called Ethan. "We got positive feedback today," I said, pacing my dorm room. "They think the app could really scale. It's not a done deal, but nice, sis," he said, his tone flat. "Just don't get ahead of yourself. Dreaming too big is how people get disappointed." His words cooled the rush in my chest, but I forced a laugh, pretended it didn't sting. 2 days later, an email from a conference organizer landed in my inbox. "We'd like to invite you to speak at the National Tech Innovators Summit." I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. This was it, the kind of stage I'd only imagined. I forwarded the email to Carter with one word: help. We got to work immediately. Carter helped me condense my story into 10 minutes that could hook a room full of strangers. She pushed me to rehearse until my throat was raw and my timing perfect. At the same time, the app was gaining traction online, thanks in part to my growing TikTok following. Messages poured in from young women saying they'd started coding because of me. That's when I decided to formalize it. I recruited 2 classmates, a graphic designer, and a back-end developer. Together, we rented a tiny office near campus, a former storage space with peeling paint but enough room for 4 desks and a whiteboard. It was ours, and it smelled faintly of hope and instant ramen. We worked late into the nights, building new features, answering user feedback, and testing integrations. I also launched a private online group for female computer science students across the state, a place to share resources, job leads, and maybe a little courage. The group grew faster than I could track, and every new member felt like a small victory against the voices that said I didn't belong here. One afternoon, Carter sent me the official guest list for the summit so I could network in advance. I scrolled down, scanning the company names, then froze. Jake. His name sat neatly under Marketing Coordinator for one of the event's major sponsors. My stomach tightened, my fingers hovering over the trackpad. I hadn't seen him since the breakup, and the thought of crossing paths on a stage like this sent a ripple of both dread and satisfaction through me. That evening, Carter called to go over final preparations. "This isn't just a talk, Mia," she said. "It's a launch pad. The right people will be in that room. Investors, partners, media. Whatever you do, be ready. This could change everything." I closed my laptop, leaning back in my chair, the hum of the office settling around me. Outside, the city lights flickered like code streaming down a screen. Change everything. I wasn't sure if I was ready, but I knew I couldn't turn back now. The ballroom pulsed with the hum of conversation, the air thick with the smell of polished wood and expensive cologne. My heels clicked against the stage floor as I stepped into the glow of 100 spotlights. The giant screen behind me projected my name in bold letters, and for a moment, the sound of applause felt unreal, almost distant. Then my gaze caught on a familiar face in the crowd, Jake. His eyes widened, his mouth slightly open, as if the air had been knocked out of him. He wasn't smiling, not even pretending to. For a split second, I felt the sting of every word he'd ever said to me. But then it evaporated. I had the mic now. "6 months ago," I began, steadying my voice. "I was just another broke college student with an idea everyone told me wasn't worth chasing." I let the silence stretch, let the weight of those words settle into the seats. Some of those people were strangers. Some were closer than I'd like to admit. A ripple ran through the audience. My story spilled out in carefully measured beats. Late nights coding in a freezing dorm room, working shifts to afford my first real laptop, the hackathon that crashed in the final 5 minutes. I didn't name names, but every word was deliberate, a thread pulled tight. I spoke of what it felt like to be underestimated, dismissed, and how that became the fire that kept me moving forward. When I told them about the first 1,000 downloads, about messages from women who decided to start coding because of my app, the room erupted in applause. Somewhere near the back, Jake's face was unreadable, but I caught the slight twitch in his jaw. I smiled, the kind of smile I hadn't worn in years. "And now," I said, leaning slightly toward the mic, "I'd like to share a number with you." Gasps echoed through the hall as the slide behind me changed. "This week, we finalized the sale of my app for $500,000. Cameras flashed in rapid bursts, reporters scribbled in notebooks, and a murmur of excitement swept the rows. I stood still, letting the moment breathe, watching it take root in the room. By the time I stepped off stage, the noise was deafening. Handshakes, congratulations, business cards pressed into my palm. My phone buzzed endlessly in my bag, somewhere between a handshake with a venture capitalist and a photo op for the conference's social media. I saw Jake approaching. "Mia," he said, voice low but urgent. "Can we talk?" I crossed my arms. "About what?" "I was wrong," he said quickly. "I didn't see this. I didn't see you, but maybe we could—" He hesitated, then smiled in that practiced way of his. "Work together. Your marketing could use someone who understands how to position a brand. We'd make a great team." I almost laughed, but it came out as a small shake of my head. "Jake, you didn't believe in me when it mattered. I'm not looking for a business partner, especially not you." His smile faltered, and I walked away before he could answer. That night, back in my hotel room, I sifted through dozens of missed calls and voicemails from my family. Words like proud and knew you could do it echoed from the recordings, but I let them sit in my inbox. I didn't know if I was ready to return those calls yet. As I was closing my laptop, another notification popped up, an email with the subject line, "We want you." The sender's address ended in SiliconValleyVentures.com. My heart thudded once, hard. Whatever this was, it wasn't just the next chapter. It was a whole new book waiting to be written. The week after the conference felt like stepping off a roller coaster and still feeling the ground sway. The noise, the flashing cameras, the business cards. They were replaced by a quieter kind of chaos. Contracts to sign, decisions to make, and an inbox overflowing with strangers congratulating me as if they'd known me all along. Carter insisted I take a break. "You can't keep sprinting forever," she said, sliding a card across the table. "This is Dr. Patel, therapist. She's worked with founders before. Trust me." At first, I resisted. Therapy felt like admitting weakness. But after one too many nights lying awake replaying Jake's words and my parents' indifference, I made the call. Dr. Patel's office was warm, almost cluttered, with mismatched chairs and the faint scent of chamomile. We didn't talk about business. We talked about the girl on the roof, staring at the city and wondering what she'd done wrong. We unpacked the weight of being the other child, the one who had to earn every scrap of recognition. Dr. Patel taught me to notice when my mind drifted back to those old wounds and to gently steer it forward again. One session, I told her I didn't think I could ever forgive Jake or my parents. She smiled. "Forgiveness isn't for them, Mia. It's for you. You don't do it because they deserve it. You do it so you can walk without dragging their mistakes behind you." I thought about that often. On a gray Tuesday afternoon, I took a long walk along the river. The water moved slow and heavy, carrying broken leaves downstream. I remembered sitting on this same bench months ago, shivering and crying into my scarf after Jake ended things. Back then the river had felt endless, like a mirror for my own uncertainty. Now it just looked like a path, one that kept moving forward, whether or not I was ready. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was my mother. I didn't pick up, but a voicemail appeared minutes later. "We want to throw a dinner for you, to celebrate what you've done. Everyone will be there." I stared at the river until the sun dipped low, wondering if everyone meant the same people who once said I was chasing a fantasy. That night, I sat at my desk, drafting a plan for something bigger than my app. The idea had been simmering since the first time a girl messaged me, saying she'd started coding because of my videos. If I could make one person believe they belonged in tech, why not 100? 1,000? Within weeks, I set up a scholarship fund for female students in computer science. I called it the Code Her Grant, and the first round of applications went live almost immediately. The response was overwhelming. Stories from young women balancing night shifts and full course loads, just like I had. Some of them reminded me so much of myself it hurt. Carter helped me organize free weekend workshops, partnering with local universities to open their labs to anyone who wanted to learn. I taught some sessions myself, standing at the front of the room with a whiteboard marker and a story to tell. The girls listened, asked questions, stayed late to debug code that refused to cooperate. One evening, while locking up after a workshop, I found Ethan leaning against the wall outside the building. "Hey," he said, almost sheepish. "I've been following what you're doing. The scholarship, the workshops. It's impressive." I didn't know what to say, so I waited. "I've been thinking about starting something of my own," he went on. "A small e-commerce platform. But I'm not sure where to begin. I was wondering if you could, give me some advice." It was strange hearing him ask instead of assume. For a moment, I saw the boy who used to share his candy with me when we were little, before the hierarchy of our family was cemented. I nodded. "Sure. But only if you're ready to hear that it's going to take work. More than you think." He laughed lightly, and for the first time in years, it didn't sound smug. As the launch date for the scholarship approached, Carter suggested a formal event to announce the first recipients. "Make it big," she said. "Media, donors, the works. This is more than a check. You're building a legacy." The guest list was tricky. I hesitated over a few names, my finger hovering above the delete button. In the end, I added them anyway. My parents, Ethan. And after a long pause, Jake. When Carter saw, she raised an eyebrow. "That's bold." I smiled, not entirely sure if it was bravery or something else. If this is about moving forward, I need to walk through every door, even the ones I'd rather keep shut. The invites went out the next morning. The night of the scholarship gala arrived wrapped in gold light and the faint hum of string music. The venue sparkled with rows of tables, white linens, and a stage framed by banners for the Code Her grant. I'd spent weeks fine-tuning every detail, but as I scanned the crowd from backstage, my eyes kept landing on a few familiar faces. My parents, Ethan, and in the far corner, Jake. After the speeches and applause for the scholarship recipients, I invited my family to a smaller room set aside for a private dinner. It was quieter there, just us and a few waitstaff slipping in and out. I waited until everyone was seated before speaking. "I want to make something clear," I said, my voice steady. "I love you all. That's never changed. But I need you to know that I don't need to prove myself to you anymore. I'm not chasing your approval. I'm building my own life on my own terms." There was a long pause. My mother shifted in her seat. My father studied the edge of his napkin. Ethan nodded, almost imperceptibly. I realized in that moment that some of them might never see me differently, and that was okay. Over the next few months, small changes emerged. My father, who had never once asked about my work, stopped me during Sunday lunch to ask my opinion on a tech article he'd read. My mother began forwarding me news about women in STEM. Ethan came by my office to brainstorm his startup idea, this time with a notebook full of research instead of empty promises. Not everything was different, but enough was. One evening, I found myself back at my parents' dining table, the same one where I'd once sat frozen as my mother told a room full of people I wasn't leadership material. This time, the conversation turned to the growth of my app. My father looked at me and said, "What do you think we should do next?" For a second, I couldn't speak. Then I smiled and gave my answer, and no one interrupted. It was a small thing, but it felt like a lifetime's worth of repair. After dessert, Carter pulled me aside, her eyes glinting with something between excitement and mischief. "We need to talk about that offer," she said under her breath. "The one from Silicon Valley. They're ready to move." The decision weighed on me for days. Expanding internationally meant stepping into an entirely new game, one with higher stakes and less room for hesitation. But I also knew that if I stayed too comfortable, I'd be betraying the very reason I started all this. I accepted. In the weeks that followed, my schedule became a blur of investor calls, legal paperwork, and late-night strategy sessions with Carter. We mapped out a plan to localize the app for markets in Europe and Asia, hiring cultural consultants and building partnerships abroad. It felt less like leaving home and more like opening every door I'd once been told was locked. Somewhere in the middle of that whirlwind, I received an invitation to give a TED Talk. The title they suggested made me laugh. From Overlooked to Unstoppable. When the day came, I stood on the red circle and told my story. Not just the victories, but the rejections, the late nights, the moments I almost believed the voices telling me to quit. The video went viral within a week, millions of views flooding in from around the world. My family watched it together at Ethan's apartment. My father didn't say much. But when the lights came back on, I saw him wiping the corner of his eye. My mother posted the video on Facebook with the caption, "Proud of my daughter, the founder." Ethan clapped me on the back. "Guess you showed them," he said. It didn't sound sarcastic this time. As the day of my departure approached, the house filled with a steady stream of calls, packages, and visits from friends wishing me luck. I tried to soak it in. The comfort of the familiar, the smell of my mother's cooking, the hum of the city I'd grown up in, because I knew it wouldn't be the same when I came back. The morning of my flight, I stood at the airport terminal, a boarding pass to San Francisco in my hand. Beyond the glass, planes taxied across the tarmac, their engines roaring like they couldn't wait to leave. I thought about the girl on the roof, the one clutching her coat against the cold, wondering if she was worth believing in. I thought about the nights I worked until my eyes blurred, about Carter's faith, about the strangers online who cheered me on without ever meeting me. I smiled, not because I'd reached the end, but because I knew there was more. Tucked into my bag was another envelope. Not a contract, not a ticket, but a proposal for a program I hadn't told anyone about yet. Something that might change the game again for more people than just me. When the boarding announcement came, I walked toward the gate, the future stretching ahead like a runway.